Hi everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful Friday night, and I decided to make a little video about this fucking herpes of racial discussion, which is slavery reparations. Like, this is something that keeps coming up. You always think that it's covered, that it's not coming back anymore, but it still keeps popping up. And now this UN-related think tank has come up with a report saying that Americans need to pay reparations for slavery, even though nobody in America actually was enslaved by an American, and nobody in America actually owns slaves. But here's what they say about it. So, in particular, the legacy of colonial history, enslavement, racial subordination and segregation, racial terrorism and racial inequality in the United States remains a serious challenge, as there has been no real commitment to reparations and to truth and reconciliation for people of African descent. Contemporary police killings and the trauma that they create are reminiscent of the past racial terror of lynching. So they throw everything at it: colonial history, enslavement, racial subordination, segregation, and they talk as if these are problems specific to the United States, like it's only Americans that have done stuff like this, when in fact it's everyone. All people in the world have done this, but white Westerners were the ones who said it right. Like, we corrected our mistakes. We realized that this kind of stuff is wrong, so we stopped doing it. But there are still tens of millions of slaves in the world. Most of them live in Africa. They live in countries like Mali, where slavery was criminalized only a few years back. And say in Saudi Arabia, slavery was still legal in the 1960s. So we are way ahead of them. There's no reason to blame us for doing something for maybe 100, 200 years that all other nations, all people in the world have done throughout history all the time. We did it for a very short amount of time, and we corrected it. Don't blame us for it. And then they even throw these police killings at it, like they have anything to do with this. Like, black people just are more criminal. They tend to get in contact with police officers more often. They commit half of the violent crime in the United States, even though they only make up something like 13% of the population. So it's only natural that they end up being killed by cops more per capita than white people do, because they commit more crime, they carry more illegal guns, they get in conflict with cops more often. So it's not racial terror. And it's actually been found that black cops are the ones who are the easiest to shoot black offendees. White cops hesitate more. They don't shoot black people as easily as black cops do. And we've seen this lately, like these killings in Charlotte and other places, that when it turned out that the racist cop who shot the innocent black guy, the little dindu, was actually black himself. So this is not a racial thing. Like, the crime, it is a racial thing, but the police work, it simply work with criminals. And police work with what they got. They don't get to choose their criminals. They have to live with the criminals the country has. And in the United States, violent offenders are largely black. So that's what the cops have to deal with. It's not their fault. And this part and there has been no real commitment to reparations and to truth and reconciliation. Like, yes, there haven't been monetary reparations, but this truth and reconciliations, like, white Americans, they bask in this shame and this blame they get for this. Like, they love to feel guilty for slavery. That's why if you go see a movie like Amistad or Roots or anything like that, or Django Unchained, you don't see black people sitting in the theater. It's only white people. They love to whip themselves for stuff like this. So clearly they want this to come out. They are not hiding it or anything. They revel in it. And then they even talk about impunity for state violence, which is clearly not true, because in these police killings we've just had that raised a lot of talk, at least one cop actually got prosecuted. And of course they're not going to prosecute all cops who shoot offendees, because not all shootings are illegal. The shooting has to be illegal for the cop to be prosecuted. If there's some thug who's going for a gun, then of course the cops can shoot the guy and not get prosecuted. This is so dumb. Like, they talk about these things like this in these broad general terms, like impunity for state violence, like all cop killings are illegal and like there's nothing to be done about it. Like, nobody's getting prosecuted if they commit an illegal murder. It's so ridiculous. And then they say, despite substantial changes since the end of the enforcement of Jim Crow and the fight for civil rights, ideology ensuring the domination of one group over another continues to negatively impact the civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of African Americans today. The dangerous ideology of white supremacy inhibits social cohesion amongst the US population. So it's the white people's fault, of course. Like, if blacks commit crimes, if they break up their own families so that 3 out of 4 black children are born out of wedlock, it's the white people's fault. Blame the whitey. When black people wreck their neighborhood so that no business wants to come there and there's no property value, it's the white people's fault. Like, when does the point come at which we start expecting something of these people, like some kind of responsibility of their own lives? Because there are some basic factors that go into getting out of poverty. And the factors are having an intact home, staying in school, going to work, and not having babies too early and out of wedlock. And if you get these things right, you are likely to succeed in getting out of poverty, regardless of your race. But these are things black people constantly fail at, and it's not anybody else's fault. Like, what are white people supposed to do for the broken black families? Like, there's nothing we can do, and there's nothing we should do about it, because it's not our problem. Like, we have our own communities to worry about. We have our own problems. We don't need to parent these people. These are completely capable human beings. They are not children we should be patronizing over. And this talk about white supremacy, like, who really is a white supremacist in USA? Like, it's so left-wing country. Like, even these far-right Republicans, like some Christian conservatives, neocons, like, even they aren't white supremacists or anything like that. Maybe they are alt-right, maybe they are white supremacists, maybe some marginal neo-Nazi groups, but it's ridiculous to talk as if white supremacy is like a state ideology in USA, because it's more like white shame that tends to be the state policy in Western countries these days. Like, white people feel shame for everything. They whip themselves and they bend over backwards to please these brown and black people. So that's basically our ideology, not white supremacy. And then they say the reparations could come in a variety of forms according to the panel, including a formal apology, health initiatives, educational opportunities, psychological rehabilitation, technology transfer, and financial support and debt cancellation. So now we are getting to the point. Money. This is exactly why they talk about the United States, not Saudi Arabia or Mali or any of these countries that used slaves. Say China, India. No talk about that, because white people have this pathological altruism. They are easily guilted. Like, you can guilt trip them into anything, and they have money. So it's very useful for you if you can guilt trip white people into something, because you can beg for stuff. You can just say, okay, I'll let you go of this guilt if you give us some health initiatives, educational opportunities, debt cancellation. Okay, then you're free of charge. And white people always fall for it, and it's so pathetic. Like, these people, these whites in America, they haven't done anything. They haven't owned slaves. If somebody offered them a slave, they would sure as hell say no. They wouldn't take a slave. So why would they have to give from their money to people who have never been slaves? Like, this is so absurd and unfair. And this entire idea of collective guilt, as if all white people are now to blame in America because 1.5% of Americans at one point owned slaves. Like, that was at the height of slavery, 1.5% of Americans. So it was, even at its own time, a very small minority that owned slaves. So now all white people are to blame. And this is so like shameless. Like how dare they? Like how dare they just put out their hand? Okay, give us money so you're free of this slavery guilt. Like these people, they have no shame. And this all debt cancellation and all that financial support, it's just money. Give us money. Oh, I'm so frustrated right now. Like this fucking reparation discussion, like this should be buried once and for all. Like this is really like a fucking herpes in this discussion. Like it keeps popping up, and Americans can never really heal because these race baiters, they pick this stuff up again and again, and the people, they never get to heal. They never get to form any sort of cohesion between themselves. And imagine what it would do to the race relations in USA right now if they actually had to pay for reparations. Like it's so tense already. And if you actually charged white people money and gave it to black people, it would be a fucking full-out race war. Like these people, they are so dumb. And it's so obvious that they aren't really looking for any sort of cohesion and healing and unity. They are only looking for these benefits, like getting free stuff out of white people. I don't know what to say about this anymore. This is just really frustrating. Well, thank you for listening. Good night.